So, some ideas before we start meditation. One of the words that I came across from a teacher that I found many years ago, in English, it's availability. How do you say that in Thai? Available. So availability, and that to me was a different way of thinking about non-grasping or non-attachment or ploy wong. I found it really helpful, actually, very interesting, because if you observe the way your mind works, you're quite often preoccupied. Your attention is with some object, usually thought. So you're thinking about yesterday or something about tomorrow, you're worried about something, you're planning something, you're analyzing something, or you're dealing with something in life, your plumbing is broken, or you're cutting your nails. So that most of our life is occupied with objects. Our attention is on objects, and it has to be that way. And the major thing we tend to be preoccupied with, which is really not constructive, is thought. So our attention isn't free, it's preoccupied, so it's not available for the Amata Dhamma. It's not available for peace because I'm involved in attention on some kind of an object. That's not immoral. It's not a moral issue. It's not immoral to think about tomorrow, but it can be boring. And one of the first things I asked Luangpor Cha from my vague memory of those days back was, how do I get rid of thinking? Because I was just so tired of all the blah, blah, blah going on and on, complaining and worrying, or self-doubt. I'm not a good monk, and please shut up, right? That kind of, I think we all have that. And there was, and unfortunately, I can't remember. I mean, I was a samanera then, so my Thai was non-existent, and someone translated afterwards. But what I remember from it, Luangpor said, well, thought is natural. You can't really get rid of it. And I found that disappointing. and then through Ajahn Sumedho's teaching, I began to see that there is a way of being aware of thought as an object. And now that's different than trying to get rid of thought, or just being so immersed in thought that there's no space and no gap. And so there's different ways to awaken to the thinking process. One is just intention, just to make the intention to notice the thinking mind. And one of the ways you do that is to notice the mood of the mind. So I don't know about you, but actually the patterns of thinking are very few. One might be worry, analysis, like I don't worry so much anymore, and I'm not so fearful, and I get annoyed sometime, but they're not heavy. But my most compelling thinking is designing something like furniture, right? So then I get this idea, ooh, I'll make that. And then I get reborn into furniture making. And it's kind of quite fun until it's not. You know what I mean? Like this would be great. I'll make this and I'll make that. And then I've gotten reborn into furniture making. And then it won't shut up. And then it goes on and on and on. And that's one way of looking at rebirth, rather than rebirth as an experience next lifetime or whatever that might be. You can see how thought gives an avenue for rebirth. And what gets reborn is a sense of self through thought. So you could see rebirth as Viradhammo building furniture is different Viradhammo being worried about the monastery. There's a different realm. I get born into the realm of making things, or born into the realm of worrying. And it's all just perpetuated by I thinking, my thinking, ahankara, mimankara, papancha, pungdang, these kinds of words we have. So one of the ways to awaken to that, you can't really get rid of it, because that very trying to get rid of something is already violent. That won't work. It'll just make it worse or make it more stronger. But what you can do is awaken to that natural phenomena by doing one thing, labeling. I think Mahasi tradition uses labeling a lot. Like if you just label, like if I'm planning to make something, there's nothing wrong with the planning, but I can say, oh, planning, or analyzing, or fantasizing, or worrying, or revenge, or whatever it is. And once you label it, you already have distance, because you're no longer the person thinking in those patterns. You already have distance. You've kind of stepped out of that realm of rebirth, and you can see, oh, thought is like this. And if it's a powerful thinking pattern, it'll have a lot of emotional content. And then, like, let's say, maybe I'm in some situation and someone really insults me in front of a lot of people, and I feel embarrassed and I lose face or something like that. And they call me a turkey. There's a turkey again. And I come away from that, and because I'm a sensitive human being, I feel that, and it doesn't feel good. And then I go home and I sit in meditation or walk around. That memory comes up. You can't get rid of that memory, but the memory now is not just a vague memory of something that happened. It has a huge emotional load in it, emotional content, and that will really perpetuate thinking, won't it? So what to do? Well, the more body awareness you have, the more skilled you are in body awareness and labeling. So you label this as, let's call this losing face or embarrassment. Okay, oh, the embarrassment, it feels this way, and then more and more you incline to the heart chakra or to the belly. Then you'll feel the tension, because that was created through that situation. Sure, if you're an arahant and they insult you, you'll say choi choi, but for most of us, we're not so choi choi. If you are choi choi, great, good on you. But we are sensitive human beings who do feel things, and there's nothing wrong with that. So then you have this interesting idea of actually like developing more strength of awareness through something which is quite negative. So there's a negative result of feeling hurt by someone. Now you're a meditator, you label it, say, feeling hurt is like this. But that doesn't mean that the thinking process is going to end. It wants to go back to that. Maybe it wants revenge, right? So you think, I'm going to get them next time. May they be well and happy. Your mind starts to create weight. Revenge is a really nice state of mind, isn't it? When you think how you're going to get the other person, that's good fun, but it's not wise. So your mind starts to do that because it wants revenge. It doesn't want this unhappiness. It wants to blame. So you have dose and things like that. And if you keep with the body awareness, it'll keep coming up, and it'll keep coming up as a self thought. And this is very important. And this, I think, is around, for me, Sakaya Ditti, the first of the fetters. Sakaya Ditti is in thinking. So the emotion comes up. It's conditioned by this past activity last week. It comes up. It has to come up. It's just the way this conditioned body experienced it. And this is the vipaka kamma of that meeting. And then the Sakaya Ditti is, I'm never going to forgive them. I'm never going to forgive them. I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back. Me. It's about me. It's not just an emotion. It's not just history. It's me. So if you can disengage the ahankara mimankara, the I making, my making, the ego, the papancha, and just say, I want to hurt this person. Feels like this, right? I'm gonna get them. Feels like this. So you're really honest. You're not just trying to be a good Buddhist. But may they be well, may they be well. Because that's what we do as Buddhists. We just try to be good Buddhists. But then we suppress things and we never liberate these things from the mind. So to liberate it, you have to make it conscious. And it's very sokoprok, isn't it? It's very kind of ugly sometimes, but that's okay. Because you still have sila. You're not hurting anyone, but you are seeing that the mind is now producing this. So if you label it, you learn how to let go of the I thinking, my thinking. That's so important. And that, I would say, is why we say when you let go of Sakkaya Ditthi, you're in the stream of Dharma. When I feel some horrible hurt that's been done to me, it comes up as memory, as thought and emotion, then I think a sense of self around it. That's not Dharma. That's ego. When I notice the same feeling as, and I don't have the I thinking, my thinking, that's Dharma. That's the Dharma of being hurt. You see the difference? It's still the same scenario, but now it's no longer, I am no longer the self, experience it, I'm the witness knowing it. And so we're trying to come to this witnessing consciousness of personal experience. It's still personal. Your hurts are not my hurts. It's still personal. So we practice as individuals, but we witness our individual karma in this way, then we are in the stream of Dharma. And that idea of Sakkaya Ditthi is very, very important, because you can see that you can be experiencing something. You can just say, that's just memory. And you don't create a sense of I around that, and it's gone. So where is the sense of I? Where did it go? There's still presence, but there isn't that gross ego sense of me and mine. So seeing that in this whole format is very, very important for liberation. Then you're able to do labeling like memory. So let's say I had this meeting with the monks, and there was some discussion of stuff and good discussion, and that comes up as memory because we talked about it. And then I can see, memory like that, feels like that. And then you start to see the gaps between thoughts. And this is important too, because thought is not a continuum. Thought is chopped up. It comes and it goes, it comes and it goes, it comes and goes. And most teachers, Luangpor Sumedho especially, make a strong suggestion that you notice the gap between thoughts, that you notice how a thought has ended, because thought's not permanent. And as you pay attention, because usually you just pay attention to the thought and you don't notice the gaps between the thought. Now you notice the gaps between the thought. It's not always there. You're not always angry or irritated. That memory is not always there. And you start to appreciate the silence of a gap, the silence between thoughts. Then you can do things like, let's say you have this memory of whatever happened, and then you can actually say it. You can say, that was unfair. You can see the silence before the thought. That was unfair. You can see the silence after the thought. So all the time we're developing a kind of witnessing to thought as an object, rather than being the constant subject in the thinking storylines that we do. So that's obviously very important. And once we do that, then we are available for peace. Otherwise, we're always just caught up. I think that's the hardest thing, isn't it? Because this thinking is just so powerful. It's such a powerful, and self-identity is so very powerful. So if you have, like, let's say if I think about my own like fears of giving Dhamma talks, it took me about 15 years to get past that. Every Dhamma talk, really quite, and I had no choice. That was just my conditioning. Was very fearful, social, shy kind of guy. I was always sort of shy. And so what would the mind do? Well, the anticipation, that's not memory, but it is kind of memory. The anticipation, I have to give a talk, me has to give a talk, would create fear. And the fear would come up. And then my thinking mind would think, well, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say that, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, da, 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 da. It felt very nice. And then when I went to give the talk, I'd forget what I was going to talk about. So that didn't work. But then I said, no, it's not. No, I have to be with the fear. So the idea of the First Noble Truth is that any sense of lack, any sense of inadequacy, any sense of pain, any sense of fear, any sense of wanting something that's not here, you have to make it conscious. Not just say, oh, I'm afraid, because I knew that, but you have to let it come up into consciousness. So I would say to myself, okay, what's it really like? What does this feel? And I would use body awareness. And so that became a vehicle for the liberation of fear from my mind. And that, I mean, that's quite hard to do, but I couldn't get, I tried everything I could to get rid of it. So I saw that there is an aspect of Buddhist, any spiritual practice, of purification. Not that we're impure in any way, but our minds have these kind of vipaka kamma echoes or streams that come up as anger, as fear, and it doesn't really matter what stimulates them. It's not really the story of who made me angry or what I am afraid of. They're kind of more basic kilesa or energies of delusion. And my sense of it is that if they come up and you have enough space to be aware of them, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because now it's a chance for purification. And I've always thought that this particular kamma I had of being a bhikkhu and then being pushed out by Luangpor Viradhammo to give talks was exactly what I needed to look at fear. Exactly what I needed. And it's exactly what I didn't want. Because who wants it, right? Who wants it? So if something triggers your anger button, or something triggers your fear button, or self-doubt, whatever it might be, realize that if you can just pay attention to it as an aroma and know it as something that's changing, if you can be patient with it, bear witness to it, then it is beginning to cease. It's going away from you, because it's not permanent. It's perpetuation in consciousness is if you fuel it. And so upadana, the word for attachment, upadana is both, it means both attachment and fuel. And you can see that if I'm angry at you and I keep thinking angry thoughts, then I'm not only attached to the anger, I'm making the causes for future anger. But if I'm angry at you and I can say anger feels this way, it's like this, that is non-attachment. The anger keeps coming up. I want to blame you. No, anger feels this way. Anger feels this way. The fuel of anger begins to die out. And that's the image of nibbana. The fire of delusion begins to go out. But first of all, you have to feel the fire very often. And so in the feeling of it, that's why I think with Luangpor Cha and the tradition in Ubon, a lot of it was just kwam oton, just be patient, bear witness to it. But it wasn't the patience of like Luangpor, like people would say about sitting still for hours and hours. Luangpor Cha would say, well, the water buffalo sits still for hours and hours. That's not it. It's not just sitting still. It's contemplating, right? It's knowing what's going on. So you don't have to be sitting in meditation to do this, right? You can be anywhere in the marketplace or whatever. So Sakkaya Ditthi, or personality view, is the I thinking, my thinking. You let go of that. You still have the vipaka kamma of the habits of fear and anger, greed, hatred, delusion, their habits, you still have the vipaka karma. And you don't have to think about past lives for vipaka karma. You just know family life, cultural life, it just builds up. Anyone has that. So it's just the result of habits that were formed in childhood and adolescence and young adulthood and so on. So that's part of the practice, is to bear witness to that. And you're doing two things again. You're purifying the mind from those habits, and you're establishing refuge in awareness. And that refuge in awareness then becomes this availability where you notice, well, the background to this whole saga or drama is very peaceful. It's very, very peaceful. You get a sense of that. So kwam oton is profound if you're doing it right. If you're doing it like a water buffalo, well, it's it is the way it is. Now, when in an environment like this, the idea of a monastic environment, say, is that we don't fill the mind. So we're not engaging in our analytical pursuits or our business pursuits, or we're not engaging in a lot of communication with our iPhones or whatever it might be. And so your mind isn't going out into objects all the time. And that's difficult because you've been doing it. Like if you've been working real hard for the last year or 2 years, or whatever, your whole life, and all of a sudden you stop and you don't have an iPhone, you don't have an iPad, you don't have a computer, your mind doesn't have anywhere to go out to, you have the habit of going out into things is now being frustrated. So it's a kind of toraman practice, the frustration of the mind going outside. But if you're patient with it and you don't fill up the mind and you watch the restlessness, then the mind begins to settle into itself and you don't need to go out. And because you don't need to go out, you're peaceful inside. But you have to realize that in the first few days of a retreat, that would be very normal to actually want to do something. I mean, let's do something. Let's not sit and walk all the time. But what we're doing is sitting and walking, so we're not filling the mind. And that produces two things. One is we're not filling the mind, so that there's the kind of restlessness, but that also sometimes allows stuff to come up because we can't hide away from it anymore. And that's a good thing too. That's fine. So whatever it is, if you constantly practice witnessing, awakening, whatever word you like, and trust in that, then I can't give you a guarantee, but I should think that the results should be quite peaceful. And this I find interesting, that even though the event of a sitting, the mental events or the experience of a sitting might be unpleasant, you can walk away from the meditation feeling very peaceful. And why is that? It's because you have not engaged in desire. You've engaged in witnessing. And so the witnessing of something unpleasant clears it from consciousness, and you've always been aware, and then you walk away, oh, sabai. That's fascinating kind of thing that happens. And that's the process. So perhaps we'll take a break. And I thought I'd go back to the heart meditation. So we did the body meditation this morning. And I'll do that again and again. But notice how I did that. That I talked about concentration and how I don't use that word. So I was suggesting just localize your attention on an area. So, it's not like a hard focus, and then just localize your attention and let the feelings in that area come up into consciousness. So that's actually stressing awareness rather than that particular part of the body. That's what I'm trying to do. But the part of the body grounds you, it keeps you in the present moment. Otherwise you wander too much. But there comes a time where you don't really need to do that, where you just abide as witness, and you can do that. So I would suggest that whatever techniques you have to ground yourself from the Mahasi tradition or whatever you've done, use those, but also experiment with not using them. experiment with just knowing, just being, kind of go back and forth and see what kind of results you get from that. So let's stretch our legs a bit, and then we'll do the meditation again. I noticed on the, someone sent me a screenshot of the participants, and there are a lot of people from Malaysia and Singapore, so welcome, and whoever else is there. So the timer could set the time for 45 minutes. I find it really helpful to be aware of the heart chakra and as a body meditation. So I'll sort of suggest that. Witnessing or knowing or being aware is our refuge. So just witnessing how you feel right now. So let's say I've got a scratchy throat and I'm trying to talk. So there's a bit of stress in trying to talk, and it feels that way. And I can be aware of that. Sorry. Listen to sound. Make conscious sound. Let sound arise in consciousness. And notice the silence of awareness. Also, just notice that there's no sense of trying to find any particular sound or trying to get rid of a sound. So it's non-desire. There's no desire in listening. No need for desire. It's just like this. Non-becoming. We're not trying to become anything. Present moment awareness. And then feel your body. Feel the warmth, coolness, whatever's there. Listen to sound. Notice the changing nature of sound. And feel your body. Notice the changing sensations. And then what is not changing. Bring attention to your mouth. Go inside the mouth. inside the left cheek. Feel the sensations as vibration, as temperature. Make conscious the feelings in the mouth. Feel the right cheek. Feel the upper palate as sensation. So no thought, no need to think. Lower palate, upper teeth, lower teeth, and tongue. Feel that whole area of the mouth as sensation in consciousness. Feel the ears inside the ear canals, the outer structures of the ears. Feel both ears as sensation. Feel the nose, the bridge of the nose, the nostrils. Feel the eyes, the eye sockets, the eyeballs themselves. If you're trying to see something, say you're trying to see something in your meditation, your eyes will get tight. So just notice any tension in the eyes. Feel the top of the head and the back of the head. And now feel the whole head as sensation in awareness. Listen to sound. Feel the head. Bring attention to your throat, front of the throat. Go inside the throat down to the center of the chest. Feel the center of the chest as sensation. Non-becoming, presence. Feel the rising and falling of the chest. On the in-breath, welcoming, an attitude of welcoming. On the out-breath, letting go. To bring a stronger sense of presence, deepen the breath, make it longer and deeper. Long breath in, centered at the chest. And long breath out at the chest. So keep with a long breath for a while, just to really ground ourselves in the present moment. And the long breath is always good because when you start thinking, the breath will become shallow again. So it's a good one to return to. Long in, long out. Let the breath be normal. On the in-breath, name or imagine a person with whom you are very close. Someone who you can think loving kindness to very easily. Name them, bring them in at the center of the chest as an image or as a name. And on the out breath, may you be well. So if I were to do Luangpor Samedo, Luangpor on the in-breath, feeling at the chest, out-breath, may you be well. In-breath, Luangpor, out-breath, may you be well. Luangpor, may you be well. So keep stimulating the heart chakra in this way. Use a person. You're not thinking about the person discursively. You're just using the trigger that their image is a trigger of to bring you to kindness. And then bring another person. So you change the name of the person, the image, and that just reinvigorates that feeling at the heart. It's like a refresh on your computer. So another person, name them, bring the name in through the whole in-breath, visualize them, out-breath, may you be well. Simple pattern. So work through a set of people, maybe 3 or 4, and then include yourself. On the in-breath, may I be well. On the out-breath, may I be free, something like that. May I be well, may I be free. And then recycle through that 4 or 5 people. Keep refreshing the heart in that way. And then at some point you find you don't really want to do the thinking anymore, and you just abide at the heart chakra, welcoming in, letting go out, welcoming in, letting go out. It becomes very simple. So let's sit for the rest of the time in silence. Just a few words before we go. So that suggestion, the gap between thoughts. So when you're doing walking meditation, people ask, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Nothing. So you're walking back and forth. Basically, you're trying to be present moment awareness. So you're noticing past, future, the mind going past and future. So if you're noticing that, then you're awakening to thought, and then really investigate the gap after thought. Because as soon as you notice you've been thinking, you stop thinking. But quite often what we do then is we analyze while we're thinking, and we think more. Or we think why we shouldn't be thinking. Or we try to get rid of thought. That's probably more common. So then we make a very, very strong effort. Okay, 20 paces, Viradhammo against the walking path. I'm not going to think, this kind of aditana, which doesn't work because the mind doesn't work that way. Thought comes and goes. So what's more profitable is to notice a thought that, they're thinking about something, and then thought, as soon as you notice thought, the thought is ended. And then investigate that gap. Really look, what is that like? But one of the things you'll notice is there's no self-thinking, so there's no ego thinking. That's important. So in some sense, Viradhammo is not there. There is presence, there is individuality, but that gross sense of Viradhammo isn't there, or whoever. So notice that, and that's kind of touching on the ideas of emptiness that we have in Theravada Buddhism. Emptiness sometimes gets confusing because you think there's nothing, but it's more empty of the sense of self, Sakkaya Ditthi. So let's say you're walking, you get to the end of the path, and you've been thinking about family or something, and then, oh, I'm here now. Then don't try to get rid of thought, but notice, oh, it's like this, and notice the silence. Investigate the silence, and if you keep doing that, that becomes the norm. And you start to hear the sound of silence, that ringing sound of the background of silence. And you appreciate that more, you move to that more, you notice that more. And that's the space of the mind. So that's another way we talk about the space, akasa meditation. If you are sitting in this room and you want to notice space, what do you have to do? You have to take your attention away from objects, from people, from sounds, from color, from design, and notice space. And there is space here, right? So how do you notice it? Well, you just take your attention away from objects. So when your attention isn't on thinking, and you notice the end of thought, you start also notice the space of the mind. Now, space is very it's not very obvious, but look at this room. It's very spacious because it has high ceilings and so on. But you go outside, it's the same space. So these things, the end of thought, the silence at the end of thought, the end of ego thinking, the gap between thought, but as an investigation. And then you'll notice your attempt to try to get rid of thought. That won't work. Okay, so we have till 5, I think, yes? So you have a chance to practice on your own. And these long sessions of meditation from 2 to 5 are very profitable because you're investing a lot of time in just satipanya, sati sampajanya. You're constantly remembering this moment is like this moment is like this. And that long span of doing this, even if you just sit and listen to the stream, it doesn't matter what you're doing formally, but your intention is always about that. That creates a strong momentum in consciousness. And that's very, very, very wholesome and very skillful. And that strong momentum then carries on. Okay, so let's go do some walking meditation.